I stood at the gravesite, the biting wind cutting through my coat, but I barely noticed. The weight of grief was far heavier than the chill in the air. My father, the man who had raised me with unwavering love and resilience, was gone. The priest's words blurred into a distant hum as I watched the casket descend into the ground. This was it, the final farewell. Beside me, my older brother, Ethan, stood rigidly, his hands clenched into fists. Unlike me, he wasn't grieving, at least, not in the way I was. His face was expressionless, but I knew him too well to miss the tension in his jaw. He was waiting. As soon as the funeral ended, before the guests even had a chance to leave, Ethan pulled me aside. His fingers dug into my wrist, his voice low but insistent. "Rachel, we need to talk." I exhaled sharply, already knowing where this was heading. "Not here, Ethan," I murmured, glancing around at the mourning relatives. But Ethan didn't care. He never did. "Give me my half of the inheritance. Now." I turned to face him fully, my stomach nodding. My father had left everything to me, our childhood home, his savings, and the bulk of his estate, including the $5 million he had spent a lifetime building. Not out of favoritism, but because he knew Ethan. He knew Ethan would burn through it in months, just like he had with his own money. Just like he had when Mom passed away and left us a small inheritance years ago. "This isn't the time," I said, keeping my voice steady even as my heart pounded. Ethan scoffed, shaking his head. "Cut the crap, Rachel. I know Dad left you everything, but we're family. That money is just sitting there. I deserve my share." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Dad made his decision, Ethan. It wasn't up to me." His eyes darkened, his lips twisting into a sneer. "You think you deserve all of it? You've always been Dad's little favorite, haven't you?" I swallowed hard, the accusation hitting me like a slap. But I refused to let it show. This isn't about favorites. It's about responsibility. Dad knew. Ethan laughed, but it was hollow and sharp. "Dad knew what? That I needed it more than you? That you'd hoard it while I struggle." I clenched my fists. "You don't struggle, Ethan. You waste. You've always wasted. That did it." His face turned red, and his hands curled into fists. "You're gonna regret this," he spat before turning and storming away. I watched him go, my chest tight. My father's last words echoed in my mind. "Don't trust him with money, Rachel. He'll ruin himself with it." I hadn't even had time to mourn before greed had come to take its place. 2 weeks later, I finally allowed myself to breathe again. The funeral was behind me, and I had done everything my father had asked, settling his affairs, making sure the house remained intact, and trying to move forward with my life. I booked a short trip to Spain, a much-needed escape. A place to process everything. Somewhere I could just exist without the weight of legal paperwork and loss pressing down on me. The first few days were peaceful. I wandered the streets of Barcelona, sipped wine by the beach, and let myself grieve without interruption. Then, on the 4th day, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it absent-mindedly, expecting a simple notification, a reminder, maybe a message from a friend. But when I saw Ethan's name, my stomach dropped. I hesitated before opening the text, an uneasy feeling curling in my gut. And then I read it. "I've taken our parents home. All their belongings are mine now. Already changed the locks." I blinked, rereading it twice. Then, before I could stop myself, I laughed. Right there, in the middle of a quiet cafe in Barcelona. Because what my dear brother didn't realize, what he had so stupidly overlooked, was that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. And I was about to teach him a lesson he'd never forget. I stared at my phone, rereading the message over and over. "I've taken our parents home. All their belongings are mine now. Already changed the locks." Ethan was a fool. For a moment, I just sat there, letting the absurdity of it all sink in. Did he really think he could just waltz into my father's house, claim it as his own, and that would be the end of it? Did he actually believe that changing the locks erased legal ownership? I took a slow sip of my wine and exhaled. This was so Ethan, always impulsive, always reckless, always thinking he could bulldoze his way through life and that no one would dare stop him. I set my glass down, my fingers tightening around my phone as I started typing. That's cute, Ethan. Let me know how that works out for you. I pressed send and leaned back in my chair, an unexpected sense of amusement rising inside me rather than anger. Because the truth was, Ethan had just made the dumbest mistake of his life. And he had no idea. I flagged down my waiter, asked for the check, and booked the first flight home. By the time I landed back in the city, exhaustion weighed down on me, but my mind was razor-sharp. I wasted no time. I called my lawyer the moment I stepped into my apartment. Rachel, Mr. Holloway answered, his voice warm yet professional. I assume this is about your brother? I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. You assume correctly. I figured. We received an alert from the house's security system a few days ago. Unauthorized entry was detected. I was waiting for you to return before taking action. I wasn't surprised. My father had been meticulous in every aspect of his life, and securing his assets was no exception. His will was ironclad. The house was still in my name. The security system was still monitored by my legal team. Ethan thought he had taken something from me. In reality, he had just broken into a house that wasn't his. I want to handle this the smart way, I said, pacing across my apartment floor. I don't want a long, drawn-out legal battle. I want this shut down quickly. Holloway hummed in thought. You have two options. You can press charges for trespassing and theft now, or we can give him an opportunity to leave voluntarily before escalating things further. I knew Ethan. He wasn't going to leave willingly. But I also knew that giving him the illusion of control would make his downfall even sweeter. Let's give him a little rope, I said, and see how much he hangs himself with. That evening, I drove up to my father's house, the house that legally belonged to me. I didn't bother knocking. Instead, I tested the door handle. Locked. As expected. I rang the doorbell. Nothing. I rang it again. Still nothing. I smirked. Oh, Ethan. He was actually pretending he wasn't home. I pulled out my phone and dialed his number. The call rang from inside the house. I could hear his obnoxious ringtone through the door. I waited. Finally, he answered. What do you want, Rachel? I leaned against the door frame. Well, for starters, I'd like my house back. Ethan scoffed. Your house? You mean our house? I let out a soft laugh. Ethan, I don't know how to break this to you, but this house, the one you're currently squatting in, is legally mine. You're trespassing. He snorted. Yeah, right. Dad wouldn't screw me over like that. Dad didn't screw you over, I shot back. You did that to yourself. You blew every cent Mom left you. You burned every bridge. You lost his trust. And now you're playing house in a home that isn't yours. Ethan's voice sharpened. You don't deserve it. That's not up to you, I said coolly. Now, I'm giving you one chance to leave before I bring the law into this. Silence. Then, a slow, mocking chuckle. Yeah? And what exactly are you gonna do, little sister? Call the cops? You wouldn't. I smiled to myself. You wanna bet? The next morning, I woke up early and made a few calls. By noon, I was parked outside the house once again. But this time, I wasn't alone. A locksmith van pulled up beside me. Are you Rachel Carter? The man asked, checking his paperwork. That's me, I confirmed. He nodded. Got your proof of ownership right here. We'll get started. The locksmith and his assistant moved quickly, working on the locks as I stood with my arms crossed, watching the front door. 10 minutes later, the moment I had been waiting for arrived. Ethan flung the door open, rage burning in his eyes. What the hell do you think you're doing? I smiled. Changing the locks. You know, since you changed them without permission. His face turned red. You can't just. Oh, but I can, I interrupted. I own this house, Ethan. You don't. I gave you a chance to leave on your own, and you didn't. So now? You don't get a choice. I turned to the locksmith. If he tries to interfere, call the police. Ethan's eyes widened slightly, but he quickly masked it with anger. This isn't over, he growled. I tilted my head. Oh, it is over, Ethan. But if you keep pushing, I'll make sure it gets even worse for you. The locksmith finished up, handed me my new keys, and nodded. All set, Miss Carter. Ethan stood there, fuming, before finally storming off toward his car. I waited, watching until he drove away. Then I stepped inside, closed the door, and locked it behind me. My house, my rules. Ethan had played his game. Now it was my turn. I sat in my father's favorite armchair, staring at the glowing security camera footage on my phone. The house was mine again. But I knew better than to think Ethan would let this go. He had always been stubborn, too arrogant to admit when he had lost. But this time, it wasn't just stubbornness. It was desperation. And I knew exactly why. My father's will had been crystal clear. The house, the savings, the estate, everything went to me. Not because I was better than Ethan, but because I was the only one who wouldn't burn it all to the ground. Ethan had already done that to himself. Growing up, Ethan had always been reckless, but after our mother passed away, things spiraled. When she died, she left us each a small inheritance, $200,000. It was meant to help us start our lives, a safety net, a gift from a mother who had always worried about our future. I put mine away, invested it, used it wisely. Ethan? He partied it away. At first, it was small, extravagant vacations, expensive cars, endless nights at bars where he threw money around like it would never run out. But when the funds dried up, he turned to something worse. Drugs. And just like that, his inheritance was gone. Within a year, he had nothing left. My father tried to help him. We all did. Rehab. Interventions. Financial support. All wasted. Ethan would get clean for a few months, swear he was finally turning his life around, and then, like clockwork, he'd relapse. The last time, he stole from our father. $10,000, vanished overnight. That was the moment my father finally accepted the truth. I can't give him another chance, Rachel, he had told me one night, his voice thick with exhaustion. I won't be around forever. And when I'm gone, if he has control of everything, he'll destroy himself. I won't let that happen. That's why the will had been so specific. Ethan wasn't cut off to be cruel. He was cut off to save him from himself. But instead of taking that as a wake-up call, he was doing what he always did, trying to take what wasn't his. The next morning, I met with my lawyer. Mr. Holloway greeted me with a knowing look and motioned for me to sit. I take it Ethan is still a problem? I let out a humorless laugh. You have no idea. He broke into the house. Changed the locks. He thinks it's his now. Holloway sighed, rubbing his temples. I had a feeling this would happen. Your father's will was airtight, but Ethan has always been unpredictable. I nodded. He's not going to stop. I need to know my options. You've already taken the right steps, Holloway said. Legally, the house is yours. He has no claim. If he attempts anything else, we can press charges. I hesitated before speaking. And what about the money? The $5 million? Holloway's expression remained calm. It's protected. He can't touch it, not legally. That should have been reassuring. But I knew Ethan. When he was desperate, he didn't care about legality. That night, I barely slept. I kept my phone close, watching the security alerts, waiting for the inevitable. And then, at 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Front entrance. My pulse spiked as I opened the app. There he was. Ethan. Dressed in dark clothes, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. But what made my stomach turn? He wasn't alone. Another man stood beside him, whispering something in his ear. Someone I didn't recognize. I knew instantly what was happening. This wasn't just a drunken visit. This was a break-in. I gripped my phone and immediately dialed 911. 911? What's your emergency? My brother is trying to break into my house, I said, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. He's not alone. I have security cameras. They're at my front door right now. The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional. Are you inside? Yes, and the doors are locked. Officers are on their way. Stay on the line. I exhaled shakily, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Ethan had officially crossed a line. And this time, there would be real consequences. Flashing red and blue lights lit up my street within minutes. I watched through the security feed as the officers stepped out, their voices sharp and authoritative. "Hands where we can see them." Ethan turned, his face morphing from cocky confidence to sheer panic. The other guy? He bolted, disappeared into the night. But Ethan? He froze. Two officers grabbed him, pressed him against the hood of the police car, and snapped the cuffs on. I opened the front door just as they were hauling him away. Ethan's eyes met mine, burning with rage. "You called the cops on me?" I crossed my arms. "You broke into my house. What did you expect?" One of the officers turned to me. "Do you want to press charges, ma'am?" Ethan's arrogance wavered. I saw it in the way his jaw clenched, the way his hands shook slightly in the cuffs. He really thought I wouldn't do it. He really thought I'd let this go. He was wrong. "Yes," I said, locking eyes with him. "I am." His face drained of color as they shoved him into the back of the squad car. The doors slammed shut. And just like that, Ethan had finally lost. But deep down I knew. This wasn't over. Not yet. I sat at my kitchen table, staring blankly at my coffee cup as the events of the past night played on repeat in my mind. Ethan was in jail. For breaking into our father's house. For trying to take something that was never his to begin with. I should have felt relief. Maybe even satisfaction. After all, this was the natural consequence of his choices. But instead, all I felt was exhaustion. Because no matter how much anger I held toward him, no matter how reckless and selfish he had been, there was one undeniable truth I couldn't shake. He was my brother. And I didn't know how to save him from himself. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. Inmate call, unknown number. I sighed, running a hand down my face before answering. "Rachel." His voice was rough, bitter. "You happy now?" I leaned against the counter, gripping the phone tighter. "Ethan, you broke into my house." "Dad's house," he corrected sharply. I closed my eyes, forcing patience into my tone. "Dad's house. That he left to me. In his will. A will that you knew about." He let out a dry laugh. "Yeah, I knew. I knew Dad screwed me over. Knew he left you everything like I never existed." I clenched my jaw. "He didn't screw you over. He protected you from yourself." Silence. Then a scoff. "Wow. So that's how you see me? As some pathetic screw-up? Some addict who can't be trusted?" I hesitated. Because the anger in his voice wasn't just anger. It was pain. "You stole from Dad, Ethan," I said quietly. "You lied to him. Used him. And when he tried to help you, you turned your back on him. What was he supposed to do?" More silence. I could hear his breathing, slow and heavy, like he was holding something back. He trailed off, his voice quieter. "I just wanted something that was mine." His words hit me harder than I expected. Because beneath all of Ethan's arrogance, his bitterness, his reckless decisions, there was a lost boy. A boy who had never fully recovered from losing our mother. A boy who had spiraled so far out of control that he couldn't find a way back. I swallowed hard. "You need help, Ethan." Another bitter laugh. "I don't need your charity." "It's not charity," I said firmly. "It's me, your sister, telling you that I don't want to watch you destroy yourself." He didn't respond. But he didn't hang up either. The next day, I met with Mr. Holloway again. "You're considering dropping the charges?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. I rubbed my temples. "I don't know. I don't think jail is going to fix him." Holloway leaned back, studying me. "Rachel, I know he's your brother, but at some point, you have to ask yourself, is he willing to change?" I let out a slow breath. "I don't know. But I do know that if he doesn't get help soon, he's going to end up dead." Holloway nodded slowly. "There is another option." I looked up. "What?" "Rehab," he said simply. "You could negotiate a deal, drop the charges if he agrees to enter a rehabilitation program. It's not a perfect solution, but it forces him to take accountability for his actions while also giving him a chance to turn things around." I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. Would Ethan even agree to that? Would he even try? Or would he see it as just another way I was trying to control him? That evening, I visited Ethan at the county jail. He looked worse than I had ever seen him. His face was tired. his eyes sunken. For the first time, he looked defeated. He didn't speak as I sat down across from him. I sighed. Ethan, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to give you a choice. He let out a humorless chuckle. A choice. That's rich. I'm serious, I said, leaning forward. I can press charges. I can let the court decide your future. Or, I paused, choosing my words carefully. You can go to rehab. His expression hardened. No, Ethan. I'm not doing that, he snapped. I don't need rehab. I exhaled. Then what do you need, huh? Another arrest? Another night in a cell? Another relapse? His jaw tightened. I need my family to stop treating me like I'm broken. My throat tightened. We only treat you that way because you are. He flinched at my words, looking away. I reached into my bag and pulled out a pamphlet, sliding it across the table. Here, I said softly. It's your choice. But I need you to understand something, Ethan. I'm not abandoning you. I'm not shutting you out. I want to help you. But I can't do that if you refuse to help yourself. He stared at the pamphlet for a long time. Then, without a word, he picked it up. That night, I sat in my father's armchair, staring at the framed picture on the wall. A photo of us as kids, Ethan and me, sitting on Dad's lap, both of us smiling like we didn't have a care in the world. I missed that version of him. I missed the brother who wasn't angry, who wasn't lost. And for the first time in years, I let myself hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd find his way back. For 3 days, I heard nothing from Ethan. I had left him with a choice: stay in jail and face the consequences, or go to rehab and try to rebuild his life. But knowing my brother, I wasn't sure which way he'd go. Part of me expected him to throw the pamphlet away the moment I left, to reject the offer out of pure stubbornness. Ethan had never been the kind of person to admit when he was wrong. But another part of me hoped that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. On the 4th day, my phone rang. Unknown caller. I hesitated before answering. Hello? There was a long pause. Then, a familiar voice, rough, tired, but unmistakably Ethan's. I'll do it. For a second, I didn't respond, unsure if I had actually heard him right. You'll do what? He let out a slow breath. Rehab. Something in my chest loosened, an invisible weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. That's good, Ethan, I said softly. That's really good. Don't make a big deal out of it, he muttered. But there was no bite in his voice. Just exhaustion. I didn't push. I knew him well enough to know that if I made this moment too emotional, he'd shut down completely. So instead, I simply said, I'll make the arrangements. Later that day, I met with Mr. Holloway again. You're sure about this? He asked as he shuffled through the paperwork. If he walks away from rehab, you won't be able to press charges again. This is a one-time deal. I nodded. I know. He studied me for a long moment before sighing. All right. I'll make the necessary filings to drop the charges under the condition that he completes the program. And just like that, the path was set. Ethan had been given a way out. Now, it was up to him to take it. A week later, I drove him to the rehab facility myself. He was quiet most of the way, staring out the window, drumming his fingers against his knee. I could tell he was nervous, though he'd never admit it. This place is fancy, he muttered as we pulled up to the facility, a sprawling building surrounded by open fields and quiet walking trails. It's one of the best, I told him. They specialize in addiction and financial rehabilitation. They'll help you figure out a plan for when you get out. Ethan scoffed. A plan. Right. I parked and turned to face him. Ethan, this is your shot. I need you to take it seriously. He didn't answer. Instead, he just stared at the entrance like it was a prison gate. Finally, he sighed. I don't know who I am without all the chaos, Rachel. His words caught me off guard. I swallowed. Then maybe it's time to figure that out. For the first time in years, he looked at me. Not with anger. Not with resentment. But with something almost like regret. Then, without another word, he opened the car door and stepped out. I watched as he walked up the steps, my heart hammering in my chest. Would he stay? Would he run? Would he actually try? I didn't know. But at least now, for the first time in a long time, the decision was his. 3 months later, I was in the kitchen making coffee when my phone buzzed. Ethan, hey, can we talk? I stared at the screen for a moment before responding. Me, of course. Call me when you're ready. I didn't know what he wanted to say. I didn't know if he had changed. But for the first time in years, I had hope. And maybe, just maybe, Ethan did too. I sat on my porch, a warm breeze rustling the trees, my phone clutched in my hand. Ethan had sent me that text 2 hours ago. Hey, can we talk? And yet, he still hadn't called. I wasn't surprised. 3 months in rehab didn't undo years of bad choices. It didn't erase the pain, the betrayals, or the mess he had made of his life. But it was a start. A start I never thought he'd take. And that meant something. An hour later, my phone rang. Ethan. I took a deep breath and answered. Hey. For a moment, there was silence on the other end. Then, a slow exhale. Hey. I closed my eyes, waiting for him to speak first. I knew better than to push. I'm out, he finally said. His voice was different, quieter, less sharp around the edges. Finished the program yesterday. I leaned back in my chair. How do you feel? He let out a short, humorless chuckle. Like I just got out of a damn monastery. I smiled slightly, but I didn't joke back. Did it help? Another pause. Then, softly. Yeah, I think it did. Something inside me eased. He cleared his throat. I wanted to say, thanks, for not giving up on me. I swallowed past the lump in my throat. I was really close, Ethan. I know. His voice was rough, but honest. And I don't blame you. I deserved everything I got. Maybe worse. I didn't say anything. Because maybe he was right. Maybe he did deserve worse. But that didn't mean I wanted him to suffer. I'm trying, he admitted. I don't know if I'll ever be normal, you know? But I want to do better. For the first time in years. I actually believed him. A few days later, we met at a small diner just outside the city. Ethan looked different. He had gained some weight back, his face was less hollow, and his hands were steadier. But more than that, there was something else. Something in his eyes. Clarity. He pushed his coffee around in his cup before finally looking up at me. So, what now? I took a slow breath. That's up to you. He nodded, like he already knew that. I need a job. That was true. And that's when I made the choice I had been debating since he called. I have one for you, I said. Ethan blinked. What? I leaned forward. Dad's house, it's mine, but I don't want to live in it forever. It's too big for me alone. But it needs some work. If you're serious about changing, if you're serious about trying, I'll hire you to help me fix it up. Pay you fairly. Give you a place to stay while you get back on your feet. His jaw tensed. You trust me with that? I met his gaze. Not completely, I admitted. But I trust that you want to be better. I continued, and I think Dad would have wanted you to have a chance. To earn something. Not take it. Not demand it. Earn it. Ethan sat there for a long time, just staring at me. Then, slowly, he nodded. Okay, he said. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a promise. But it was a start. And for the first time, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to being a family again. Months passed. And, for the first time in years, Ethan stayed true to his word. He worked hard, fixing up the house with me. At first, we barely spoke, just worked side by side, painting walls, fixing broken tiles, clearing out old memories. But as time went on, we talked more. About Dad. About Mom. About the things we lost and the things we still had. One evening, as we sat on the back porch, watching the sun dip below the trees, Ethan spoke quietly. I miss them, he admitted. I hate that I wasted so much time being angry. I looked over at him. Then don't waste any more. He nodded. But I knew it wasn't that simple. Healing wasn't instant. Forgiveness wasn't easy. But we were trying. And, for now, that was enough.